I went to Rare, which is a romance readers and authors event in July, and I got a whole lot of books. So many so that I really don't want to have to rearrange my shelf to get all those books on them. A lot of them were given to me either by the author when I saw them at the tables, or they were kind of part of the free book giveaways that the event was having. So I picked up a lot of authors I haven't tried before on the assumption that it's a good way to try these authors. My thought is that I will break the books down into a contemporary pile and a fantasy pile, which gives me about 6 or 7 books in each. And I'm going to do 2 try a chapter vlogs. I'm going to update you to let you know what I think of the author's writing style, what I think of the setup for the book, and whether or not I'm going to keep it on my shelves, and if not, I'm going to unhaul it and hope that it works better for someone else. I already put out a video where I gave you the haul from Rare and I the entire summary for them, so I won't do that here, but I will link that video below if you want to check out a bit more detail about any of the books specifically. In this particular vlog, these are all either fantasy romance, dark fantasy romance, romantasy, paranormal romance, somewhere in that sphere. I have 7 books by 6 authors, none of which I have ever read from before. We have The Valkyrie's Claim by Inez Johnston, Fractured Fates by Hannah Hayes, Liminal by Marie Mystery, Viciously Yours by Jamie Applegate Hunter, The Umbra King, also by Jamie Applegate Hunter. This one looks like it'll be much darker than the other, so I'll be interested to see if I like both or one of this author's books and what those differences might be. Heart of Defiance by Ava Chase and Wolf Caged by Felicity Heaton. I'm going to go off and pick my first book and I will come back to you when I have any updates. Okay, so I have the first 3 try a chapters read and we're going to chat about them. The first one, Heart of Defiance by Ava Chase. Now, Ava Chase is definitely an author I had heard of even before Rare. It's a name I'd seen floating about the bookish community, so I did have expectations of this one. My first chapter gave me about 12 pages out of 303. Not bad for a first snippet. This one sets us up with Signy, who is a social outcast in a world that feels to me kind of vaguely Norse inspired, just from the names and the gods. It's not a Norse retelling, but the names have that slightly Nordic feel. Signy is an outcast. She, in the past, has sacrificed her little toes to her chosen goddess in exchange for magic, but she was denied that power. So it's not clear whether being rejected by her goddess is what has made her a social outcast or whether there's more to it. She lives on the outskirts. Her family have been killed by this empire that rules over their town. Signy's mother has been a sculptress. She created the town fountain, and these empire guards are coming through the village. They take what they want from the shops, they take bread from the bakery, and just as an act of kind of vandalism, they start to attack the sculpture. Signy objects, she runs in, she tries to stop them, and it seems to spark something within the villagers that they also see this statue is theirs, it's part of their village, it's not part of the empire, and they want to protect it. And they join in and they take on these guards with her. The other guards make threats that they'll be back and they run off. And that's where we leave the chapter. So it feels like that outcast aspect really isn't going to stick around for long. Signy is very much going to be caught up, and I think from the sounds of the blurb, going to be the figurehead of this rebellion against the empire. Though we haven't seen much of those villagers, quite honestly, they seemed okay, and I'm a little unsure why Signy is such an outcast and why these villagers have been so cruel to her when in this moment they all do seem like they're pretty on board. In terms of what I'm getting from the book itself, I'm not completely sold on the writing style. It feels a little awkward to me. There's just something off I can't put my finger on. But I am intrigued enough that I would probably at least try another couple of chapters. I wouldn't be definitely sold on continuing the book, but I would definitely not DNF it after this first chapter. My second chapter was from Wolf Caged by Felicity Heaton, and there are some similarities in this one. Firstly, the book is told in first-person POV, which is not usually my favourite, if I'm honest. And also that chapter 1 took us to about page 12, which in which in Heart of Defiance was a decent sized chunk, but in this book, which is like 660 odd pages, it feels like a much, much smaller section. So I think that I would probably read more in this book. This one is about Saphira. She is a young wolf shifter, and by young, she's 98. She's just about to go into her first heat, and she is getting married to her childhood sweetheart, her fated mate, the alpha of this rival clan, rival pack. There's some family history there. She talks about the fact that she's really lucky that this marriage is going ahead because her pack have just unsuccessfully tried to unseat his pack. So this is a kind of alliance that's happening. We also get, though, a little bit more depth in Saphira in that we are told all about how she longs to travel. The novel seems kind of nominally to be set in Canada, and she talks about wanting to see different places. She wants to make quite a long trek to Vancouver. She wants to see the sea. But she knows that when she becomes the pack alpha's mate, her job is going to be obviously to produce more pack members. She's not going to get that chance to explore, to travel that she longs for. So as much as she is desperate to marry this man, Lucas, she also has these really conflicting feelings, which I think are interesting, and I can see being what propels her into more adventure as the story goes along. Other than that, not much happens. She has a little bit of a chat with her friend. She has a bit of a chat with her mother about, her position as the daughter of the pack and making this alliance. She gets dressed for the wedding. The character work there is nice. I like that we got a secondary motive for Saphira, but I don't really feel that I got anything else from the chapter. And the last chapter is The Valkyrie's Claim by Inez Johnston. This is a little 120 odd page prequel novella set in her Last Dragons universe. This time the first chapter took me to round about page 8. This one is Norse inspired. There is definitely Norse inspiration in this one. We start with Regan, who is a Valkyrie sent by her goddess mother to abduct a human criminal, and she's going to take him to this other realm beyond the veil and make him pay for his criminal crimes. However, in this chapter, Regan is fairly easily distracted. When she gets this criminal through into the kind of their magical land, she stops by, I think it's a pub or a tavern, and spots this dragon shifter shagging a fairy, and basically spends at least half those 8 pages just watching them go at it. I think the strongest element in this one, or the most interesting element in this one, is that the author has tried to get a sense of humour through it. Regan is a very voicey character. Having this be set, although it's a magical world, it's also in the modern day. It means that I think the writing choices, the dialogue choices, didn't feel as awkwardly kind of stilted to me as they did in the first book, which was set in a more, fake historical time period. So I have another 3 first chapters tried, and I think this batch went better than the last. I decided that I might as well try my 2 Jamie Applegate Hunter books back to back. I started with The Umbra King because it was the chunkiest. This one has an awful lot of front matter. There's maps, there's character lists, there's also what looked to be the author's world building notes, and I thought that was a really nice touch. It explains to you her different creatures, her different kind of groupings of types of people, and then maybe the powers they have. It makes for a really nice reference going back and forth. That cover is really reflecting the light, so I'm just going to stick a photo here for you. The first chapter that I read took me to around about page 10 of about 380. We are introduced to our main character, Aurora or Rory. She and her twin sister, Cora, are fae, and they both have magical powers. Rory has a type of colour blindness where she only sees in grayscale, but her power is that she sees flashes of colour in people's souls, and so can tell a lot about them can immediately tell quite a lot about them. We're told how after her sister was brutally murdered in front of her, Rory has taken up a quest using this ability to hunt down bad people. We see her in a kind of loosely enforcer or serial killer type of role. We're not given too much information on exactly how and why she's committing these assassinations, whether it's in furtherance of someone else's goals or whether she does it off her own back, but she seems to be fairly efficient. The downside of this chapter was that it was quite exposition heavy, really over explaining terminology rather than maybe leaving some things out and coming back to them in later chapters. We were being told very upfront what different terms were, what different elements of the world building were. We were told very explicitly who different characters were in relation to each other and what their history had been. I felt like a lot of these details could have been more smoothly woven maybe into the next couple of chapters. But I am hoping and assuming that that will even out. This chapter was exposition heavy, but we've done it now. So my hope is that in the rest of the book, we won't need to go over these things and the writing style will kind of smooth out. The second thing that I will admit is truly petty and did bother me about the writing is that the author uses italics whenever we use these kind of magical terms. So fae, shifters, all her other created creature paranormal aspects, they're all italicized. And when I'm reading, I feel like there's emphasis put on those words when there shouldn't be. It just becomes distracting. I do feel really intrigued by this book. And honestly, of the four I've read up to this point, I think it's the one that I am the most interested in continuing with. I will possibly see whether there is an audiobook version because I think that might bother me less. I am really chuffed that this one seems to be one that I do want to continue because I have already spoken to Amanda at Amanda's Booktopia and she has mentioned being quite interested in buddy reading this at some point. So let me know if you want to join us for that. Next, I picked up Viciously Yours, which is from the same author but is a much shorter book. This one is only about 250 pages. This first chapter follows Rennick, who is 13 years old, and actually, for once, this is a male main character. He is a fae prince, and at 13, he has just found the name of his fated mate. This is very exciting for him because the royal family absolutely have to find their fated mates, they have to marry them. It's very, very important to the social structure of the fae. The name he has kind of received in his head is Amelia. He doesn't know who she is, although he has been keeping an eye out amongst his peers. But his father and mother, the king and queen, they're very encouraging. They're very hopeful that he's going to find Amelia soon. Then at the end of the chapter, rebels invade the palace and his mother, the queen, is killed. Rennick has a moment to be sad that his mother will never get to meet Amelia, and that's sort of where the chapter ends. The biggest issue I had with this chapter was the same as I had with the other Jamie Applegate Hunter book. There's a lot of exposition about how the world works, who the characters are in relation to each other very early on. Maybe that's because when she's writing her fantasy, she wants to keep these things clear. She wants to make these things easy for the reader to quickly get a hold of. That would also explain all the front matter. But it just feels awkward to me. It feels slightly uncomfortable and slightly stilted. My solution in this case is very simple in that my plan is to read the Umbra King first. Of the two, it has the plotline I feel the most interested in. And if over the course of reading that, the writing doesn't bother me, then I can pick up this one afterwards. Then we have Fractured Fates by Hannah Hayes. And again, this one is a little shiny, so I will just stick a picture for you instead. The first chapter of this, along with the prologue, took me up to about page 12 of 380. There is an author's note at the beginning, which I will be honest, did maybe not set me up with the best expectations. This book is a why choose bully paranormal romance with one female main character and more than one potential love interest. These love interests are ruthless and at times brutally unkind. There are scenes that some readers may find uncomfortable, including violence and gore. Now, I don't have any particular problem with violence and gore, especially in fantasy novels, but why choose romances haven't worked for me in the past, although I have nothing against them. But bully romance is especially something I'm just not interested in. I don't like when the love interest is an asshole. So when the whole concept is that is the main character, it really, really makes me not want to pick up the book. And the fact that we're going to have multiple versions of that character, if it's the why choose, I am skeptical. That being said, I did read both the prologue and the first chapter. In the prologue, we are introduced to Rihanna as a child. She's in the house where she lives with her aunt. She's pulled from her bed in the middle of the night and hidden away in a cupboard as their house is attacked by what we're just told are some kind of magical users, magical people. What I really, really liked about this prologue, and it managed to do it really quickly in just maybe a page or two, was it gave me a lot of confidence in Hannah Hayes' writing, because I've had a few books recently that have featured a child protagonist, or where the prologue has featured a child protagonist. And writing kids is so hard. Writing kids that sound and feel like kids in a book that is actually aimed at adults is, I reckon, probably one of the hardest tests of an author's ability. It's so hard to not make them sound like adults that are short, or to go the other way and make them sound like toddlers when they're meant to be maybe 8 or 9. It's so hard to get kids' voices right. And I thought that Hannah Hayes did that brilliantly. There are lots of just little lines that just gave you the feeling of this being a small child without going into baby talk, without making it really uncomfortably awkward. Just things like swinging her legs over the side of the bed, her aunt threading her arms through her sleeves as she's getting her dressed, clinging to her aunt's kind of skirt as she begs her to stay to hide with her. It just felt very perfectly like a child. It's nice to know that it's definitely not the writing that I don't like. It's nothing against the writer. Plot choices we can disagree on, but it would definitely mean if the writing is something I enjoy, then I could read more books from this author in the future, whether this one works or not. In the actual first chapter, we get back in touch with Rihanna when she is now an adult. She appears to have been on the run, and we get to know a little bit more. She's an unregistered magical user, and she's been hunted down, whether it's by kind of bounty hunters or government officials or whatever, we don't exactly know yet. But she really just wants to pop back to the farm where she lives, because she's had to flee in the middle of the night and she's had to leave her pet pig Pip. And Pip, she says, is the runt of the litter, and he's not the brightest spark. He will probably starve if she doesn't go and pick him up. So she makes an attempt, and of course, there is someone lying in wait for her there. And I have to say, I was so invested in what happened to Pip. I had to know if she managed to save him. I have to know if he gets out okay. I'm more invested in this pet pig than I have been in lots of entire main characters from books. I honestly think this book has been the best writing, best prose of all the books I've read so far. I'm still not completely sold on the concept of the story. I'm not completely sold that romance, the paranormal bully why choose, is going to work for me. I might get a few chapters in and absolutely hate it, but that will be because of the kind of plot choices and maybe the character choices rather than any kind of nudge at the author's writing skills. I did want to continue with the book, which honestly, after reading that author's note, I didn't expect. So the last of my Try a Chapters in this Romantasy version of the Try a Chapter vlog is Liminal by Marie Mystery. The reason I kept it to last was that the prologue and the first chapter together were 30 pages, which was just more than double all of the others. I ended up only reading the prologue, which was the first 17 pages, but honestly, that was all I needed, because the prologue was just, it was so well written. I didn't feel like I was doing a Try a Chapter tag. I just felt like I was reading the book. I was completely hooked. The storyline absolutely grabbed me, and I definitely am going to be continuing with this one. In this, we meet Corinth, and she is the liminal in the title. In this, liminals are magically gifted people who don't come from an esteemed magical lineage. They're not descendants of one of the core magical families. They've come from parents that maybe inherited a drop of magic generations ago, or people that don't have any magic whatsoever. So she's very considered almost a second class citizen. She's been a maid in one of the wealthy families, and they've spotted her potential. In this first chapter, Corinth is taken away from a big university party in the middle by quite creepy old men. One is the university magistrate and one is the rector. She's taken down into the depths of the Arcanum, which is like the magical library for this university, and ritually sacrificed by all these old, wealthy wizard family members. Unfortunately for them, Corinth fights back, and although she does die in that first prologue chapter, she becomes a sort of spirit of the library and takes control of it. She immediately pulls back all of their loans, revokes their library cards, and physically ejects them and their descendants from her library. From now on, the library is going to be based on merit, not family. I am completely and utterly hooked by this story. I'm so excited to read it. The only little glitch is, as I think popped up in some of the other books, there is an author's note. I read it after I read the prologue. This is a reverse harem book, which is fine, but just not something I usually read. So once we get into that, my opinions might change slightly. It actually has 6 potential love interests. That means we'll have 7 main characters, including Corinth herself. And I just think I might struggle with that, to keep all those 6 different guys separate in my head. I'm a little bit skeptical of how easily the author is going to be able to make all 6 of those men feel like distinct, fully fleshed out people. But I do have really high hopes for this one. I'm going to give it maybe a week or 2 and come back and let you know that, having reflected or having put a bit of distance between me and these chapters, which books I still am genuinely interested in, which ones in a week am I still thinking about, and do I definitely want to go back and read. It has been about a week, over a week. It has been an indeterminate amount of time since I last filmed those try a chapter sections, since I updated you on my thoughts on those books. Now that I've had a little time away from them, my opinions on some of them have shifted a little. Some of the ones that I maybe thought I would be really interested in, I've just not been too bothered by. And some of the ones that I was on the fence about, I have moved more firmly into the definitely category. So of the, was it 7 Romantasy books that I went through, I have narrowed it down to 3 that I will be adding to my TBR to get to at some point. And for the rest, I am going to keep hold of them for a little while longer, just to make sure that I don't change my mind again. They're not going to go on my bookshelf, they're going to sit off to one side, and I'm probably going to unhaul them whenever I next have a clear out. So for the 3 that I am keeping and definitely adding to my TBR, the first one is Fractured Fates by Hannah Hayes. And this one is probably the most surprising book, because when I had the stack in front of me before I started reading it, this was definitely one of the ones that I was fairly certain I was going to be unhauling straight away. It is a why choose bully romance, none of which really appeals to me, but the author completely won me over with her writing, and I at least want to give the plot itself a decent shot. The next book that I'll be keeping is Liminal by Marie Mystery. Of all the books I read, this one felt the smoothest to me in terms of writing. I genuinely forgot that I was doing a try a chapter when I got to the end of that prologue. It was a fairly substantial prologue, so although I didn't really get into the meat of the current day story, the writing and just the author's voice has completely convinced me that this is one I want to try. It's another why choose, but this one is set in a library, and I just think this one sounds really interesting in the plot. And then the last of the 3 that I'll be keeping is The Umbra King by Jamie Applegate Hunter. This one is a dark romance. Again, not necessarily something I would pick up just for that, but again, I was fairly sold by the author's writing. And this one is definitely the plot that has me most interested. The fact that I potentially have a buddy read lined up just adds to the decision to keep it. I had a second Jamie Applegate Hunter book that didn't really intrigue me as much, and honestly, I'm probably going to unhaul that one. So that's the end of the vlog. Please let me know what you think. Were you interested in any of the books right from the start? Are any on your TBR? Have you been convinced to add any to your TBR? And would you have kept or tossed the ones that I've decided to keep? Thank you so much for watching. I'd love if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.